Jake Mitchell sat at the corner table of Romano's cafe, watching the door like his life depended on it. His coffee had gone cold 20 minutes ago, but he kept pretending to sip it anyway. The waitress had already asked him 3 times if he wanted to order something else. Each time he'd smiled and said he was waiting for someone, but that someone was now 45 minutes late. Jake pulled out his phone again, checking for the 100th time. No new messages. The last text from David was from this morning, a simple, "Can't wait to see you tonight," with a smiley face. That was 8 hours ago. He scrolled up through their conversation history looking for some clue he might have missed. Had he gotten the time wrong? No, they'd confirmed everything yesterday. 7 o'clock at Romano's. It was right there in black and white. Jake's chest felt tight. This wasn't like David at all. They'd met 6 weeks ago on a dating app, and honestly, Jake hadn't expected much. After 2 years of awkward first dates and guys who looked nothing like their photos, he'd almost given up. But David's profile had been different. Real. His pictures showed a guy with messy black hair, glasses slightly crooked, always mid-laugh in every photo. His bio simply said, "Architect by day, terrible cook by night, looking for someone who won't judge my instant noodle addiction." Jake had laughed out loud reading it. He'd sent a message. "I'll overlook the instant noodles if you can handle someone who talks to his houseplants." David had replied within minutes. Do they talk back? Because that's the real question. Their first date had been at a bookstore cafe. Jake had arrived early, nervous and second-guessing his outfit choice. But the moment David walked in, slightly out of breath because he'd jogged 3 blocks from the parking garage, all that anxiety melted away. David had this energy about him, warm and genuine, like talking to an old friend you hadn't seen in years. They'd spent 3 hours there, closing down the cafe. They talked about everything. Childhood dreams, terrible jobs they'd survived, favorite movies they were embarrassed to admit they loved. David had a 6-year-old daughter named Lily from a previous relationship. He'd shown Jake pictures on his phone, his whole face lighting up as he talked about her obsession with dinosaurs and how she insisted on wearing her princess crown to the grocery store. "She's my whole world," David had said simply. "Any guy I date has to understand that." Jake had nodded, feeling something shift in his chest. "I think that's beautiful." Their second date had been even better. They'd gone to the botanical gardens, walking the paths for hours. David had pointed out different plants, making up ridiculous fake names for the ones he didn't recognize. "That's clearly a fluffy McFlufferson," he'd said, gesturing to a fern. Jake had nearly doubled over laughing. At the end of that date, standing by Jake's car in the parking lot, David had reached out and taken his hand. It was such a simple gesture, but it had made Jake's heart race like he was 16 again. "I really like you," David had said quietly. "I don't want to play games or be cool about this. I haven't felt this way in a long time." Jake had squeezed his hand. "I really like you too." They'd kissed then, soft and sweet, and Jake had driven home feeling like he was floating. That had been a week ago. They'd texted every day since, sometimes silly memes, sometimes long rambling messages about their days. David had told him about a difficult client at work, and Jake had shared his frustration with a design project that wasn't coming together. It felt easy, natural, like they'd been doing this for years instead of weeks. So this, sitting alone in a cafe while David seemingly vanished into thin air, made no sense at all. Jake checked his phone again. 7:52, nearly an hour late now. He opened their text thread and typed out a message. "Hey, just checking in. Still at Romano's, everything okay?" He stared at the screen, watching for those 3 little dots that would mean David was typing. Nothing. The waitress appeared again, her smile sympathetic now. "Honey, can I get you anything else? Maybe some food?" Jake shook his head, trying to keep his voice steady. "No, thank you. I think I'm going to head out, actually." She patted his shoulder gently. "I'm sorry, sweetheart." Jake left cash on the table for the coffee and walked out into the cool evening air. The street was busy with weekend crowds, couples holding hands, groups of friends laughing as they headed to restaurants and bars. He felt completely alone. As he walked to his car, his mind raced through possibilities. Maybe David's phone had died. Maybe there was a family emergency. Maybe Lily had gotten sick and he'd had to rush to pick her up. But wouldn't he have found a way to let Jake know? Borrowed someone else's phone? Used a computer? Or maybe, and this thought made Jake's stomach drop, Maybe David had just changed his mind. Maybe he'd woken up this morning and realized he wasn't as interested as he thought. Maybe the whole thing about not playing games had been exactly that, a game. Jake unlocked his car and sat in the driver's seat, not starting the engine yet. He pulled out his phone one more time, hoping against hope for a message. Still nothing. He typed out another text. "I'm heading home. Hope you're all right. Let me know when you can." He hit send and dropped the phone in the cup holder. As he started the car, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. That old familiar ache of disappointment. He'd really thought David was different. He'd let himself hope. Let himself imagine a future where Sunday mornings meant pancakes with David and Lily, where he'd finally found someone who got him. The drive home felt longer than usual. Jake lived in a small apartment across town. Nothing fancy, but it was his. He'd decorated it carefully over the years, filling it with plants and art prints and comfortable furniture. It had always felt like a sanctuary. Tonight, it just felt empty. He changed into sweatpants and made himself a cup of tea, settling onto the couch with his phone within reach. Part of him wanted to delete David's number, delete the app, protect himself from any more hurt. But another part, the part that had felt David's hand in his and heard the genuine warmth in his voice, couldn't quite give up yet. Jake turned on the TV, not really watching whatever show was playing. His mind kept replaying every conversation, every moment, looking for signs he'd missed. Had he come on too strong? Said something wrong? Misread everything? His phone buzzed and Jake grabbed it so fast he nearly dropped it. But it wasn't David. It was his best friend, Rachel. "How's the date going?" Jake stared at the message for a long moment before typing back. He didn't show. "Been ghosted, I think." 3 dots appeared immediately then. "What? No way, want me to come over?" Jake smiled despite himself. "No, I'm okay. Just gonna call it an early night." But he wasn't okay. Not really. He was confused and hurt, and trying not to feel foolish for believing this time might be different. As he lay in bed that night, Jake made himself a promise. Tomorrow he'd delete the texts, move on, forget about the architect with the crooked glasses and the beautiful smile who'd made him believe in possibilities again. Tomorrow, he'd protect his heart. He had no idea that tomorrow would change everything. Jake woke up to sunlight streaming through his bedroom window and the immediate, crushing memory of last night. For a few blissful seconds after opening his eyes, he'd forgotten. Then it all came rushing back. The empty chair across from him at Romano's, the unanswered texts, the long drive home with that hollow feeling in his chest. He grabbed his phone from the nightstand. Still nothing from David. It was 9:30 on a Sunday morning. Jake rolled onto his back and stared at the ceiling, feeling that special kind of tired that comes from a night of restless sleep. He'd probably checked his phone 20 times during the night, each time hoping and each time disappointed. His cat, Winston, jumped onto the bed and headbutted his hand, demanding breakfast. At least someone still needed him. Jake dragged himself out of bed and went through the motions of his morning routine. Feed Winston, make coffee, water the plants. He'd always loved Sunday mornings, the slow, peaceful start to the day. But today everything felt off, like he was moving through water. He was standing at the kitchen counter, staring blankly at his coffee when his phone rang. Jake's heart jumped. He lunged for it, hoping to see David's name on the screen. But it was Rachel. "Morning," he answered, trying to sound more awake than he felt. "Okay, I couldn't sleep thinking about you," Rachel said immediately. "Are you sure you don't want company? I can bring bagels, and also maybe a baseball bat to break David's kneecaps." Despite everything, Jake laughed. "I appreciate the offer on both counts, but I'm fine, really." "You're a terrible liar." "Yeah, well." Jake took a sip of his coffee. "What am I supposed to do? Show up at his apartment? That's crazy person behavior. You could at least send one more text. Maybe something happened. Maybe his phone really did die. For 16 hours? Come on, Rachel sighed. "I know, I just hate this for you. You really liked him." "Yeah," Jake said quietly. "I really did." They talked for a few more minutes before hanging up. Jake looked at his phone, at David's contact information still saved with the little heart emoji he'd added after their second date. His thumb hovered over the delete button, but he couldn't do it. Not yet. Instead, he decided to clean his apartment. Nothing like scrubbing a bathroom to avoid dealing with your feelings. He was on his hands and knees attacking the kitchen floor with more aggression than necessary when someone knocked on his door. Jake sat back on his heels, confused. He wasn't expecting anyone. Rachel had offered to come over, but he'd said no. Maybe it was his neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who occasionally asked him to help with her computer. He stood up, wiping his hands on his jeans, and walked to the door. Through the peephole, he saw two small figures standing in the hallway. Kids? Jake opened the door and found himself looking down at two children. A little girl, maybe 6 or 7, with her black hair pulled into pigtails, wearing a dinosaur t-shirt and light-up sneakers. Next to her stood a boy who looked about 9, with the same dark hair and serious brown eyes, holding the girl's hand. They both looked up at him with expressions that were somehow both nervous and determined. Jake said, completely baffled.
Can I help you?
The little girl spoke first, her voice small but clear. Are you Jake? Jake's confusion deepened. Yes, who are you guys? I'm Lily, the girl said. And this is my brother Tommy. Our dad is David Chen. Jake felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. He gripped the doorframe. What? Tommy, the older boy, spoke up. His voice was steadier than his sister's, but Jake could see his hands shaking slightly. Our dad wanted to come see you yesterday. He got all dressed up and everything. But then something bad happened and he couldn't come. He made us promise to come find you and tell you he's sorry. Jake's mind was racing, trying to process this information. David had a daughter, yes, Lily, this must be her. But a son? David had never mentioned a son. And why would children be showing up at his apartment alone? Wait, Jake said, crouching down to be at eye level with them. Where's your dad right now? Is he okay? Lily's eyes started to fill with tears. He's in the hospital. There was an accident. Jake's stomach dropped. What kind of accident? What happened? Tommy pulled a piece of paper from his pocket and handed it to Jake. It was wrinkled and had a few words written in shaky handwriting. Jake Mitchell, apartment 4B, 2847 Oak Street. Tell him I'm sorry. Tell him it wasn't a choice. Jake stared at the note, his hand trembling. This was David's address for him, written in what must have been a child's handwriting. Your dad wrote this? Jake asked. No, Tommy said. He told me what to write. His hands are, he made a gesture. He can't really use them right now. Jake's heart was pounding. Okay, you need to tell me everything. Start from the beginning. What happened to your dad? The children exchanged a glance and then Tommy started talking. Yesterday afternoon, Dad was getting ready to go see you. He was really happy, singing while he got dressed. Me and Lily were supposed to stay with our aunt, but she called and said she was sick. Dad said it was okay, he'd figure something out. Lily picked up the story, her voice wobbling. We were in the car and Dad was taking us to our grandma's house first. But then this other car ran a red light and hit us really hard on Dad's side. Jake felt like he couldn't breathe. Tommy continued. The airbags went off and everything was really loud and scary. Me and Lily were okay, we just had some bruises from the seatbelts. But Dad, his voice cracked. His arm got really hurt and he hit his head. The ambulance came and took us all to the hospital. They kept Dad overnight, Lily added. They said he has a concussion and his arm is broken in 2 places and he has cuts from the glass. Jake stood up slowly, his mind reeling. David hadn't ghosted him. David had been in a car accident. With his kids. While on his way to see Jake, where are your grandparents now? Jake asked. Do they know you're here? Tommy looked down at his shoes. Grandma stayed at the hospital with Dad last night. This morning, she came home to make us breakfast and get some rest. She fell asleep on the couch. She was really tired. We left her a note, Lily said quickly. We didn't want her to worry. We told her we went to the playground. Jake ran his hand through his hair, trying to think clearly. You snuck out to come find me? Dad kept saying your name, Tommy explained. When he was in the emergency room before they gave him medicine that made him sleepy. He kept saying Jake and Romanos and sorry. The doctors and Grandma didn't know what he meant, but I remembered. Dad had told me he was going on a date with someone named Jake. He really likes you, Lily said simply. He talks about you all the time. He smiles when he reads your messages. Jake felt his throat tighten. How did you even find me? How did you get here? Dad's phone was in his jacket, Tommy said. I took it this morning when Grandma was making breakfast. I found your messages and saw your address in an old text. Then I looked it up on the Maps app. It said it was a 20-minute walk from Grandma's house. You walked here, both of you? By yourselves? Tommy nodded. I'm 9. I'm old enough. And I kept Lily safe the whole way. Jake didn't know whether to be impressed or terrified. Probably both. Okay, first things first. We need to call your grandmother right now. She's probably waking up and panicking. Are you mad at us? Lily asked in a small voice. Jake crouched down again and looked at both of them. These brave, ridiculous, amazing kids who'd walked across town to deliver a message for their father. No, I'm not mad. But your grandma is going to be very scared when she realizes you're gone, and your dad needs to know you're safe. He pulled out his phone. Tommy, what's your grandmother's name? Patricia Chen. Jake looked through David's contact list on his own phone and found a number labeled Mom. He called it, and it rang twice before a frantic voice answered. David. Is that you? Are you okay? Ms. Chen, this is Jake Mitchell. I'm a friend of David's. Your grandchildren are with me. They're safe. There was a sharp intake of breath. What? Tommy, Lily? They're with you? Where are you? I'm at my apartment. They walked here. They wanted to tell me about David's accident. Oh my God, Patricia's voice was shaking. Oh my God, I just woke up and found their note. I've been calling their names. I thought, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm coming right now. What's your address? Jake gave her the address and she said she'd be there in 15 minutes. After he hung up, he looked at the 2 children standing in his doorway and felt a surge of emotion he couldn't quite name. Come inside, he said gently. Let's get you guys something to drink while we wait for your grandma. They followed him into his apartment. Lily's eyes went wide when she saw all the plants. Wow, it's like a jungle. I like plants, Jake said with a small smile. Do you guys want some juice, water? Do you have chocolate milk? Lily asked hopefully. I don't, sorry, but I have apple juice. That's okay. Jake poured them both juice and they sat at his small kitchen table. Winston wandered over and rubbed against Lily's legs, making her giggle. You have a cat. What's his name? Winston? Like the guy from that old war movie Grandma watches? Tommy asked. Jake blinked, impressed. Yeah, actually. Exactly like that. They sat in slightly awkward silence for a moment. Then Lily said, Dad was really excited to see you yesterday. He tried on like 5 different shirts. Tommy nodded. And he made me and Lily promise not to tell you about me yet. He said he wanted to tell you himself the right way. Jake frowned. Why didn't he tell me about you, Tommy? The boy shrugged, looking down at his juice. I don't know. Maybe because my mom is his ex-wife and Lily's mom is his girlfriend who died. It's complicated. Jake's heart ached. David had never mentioned any of this. They'd only had 2 dates, of course, but still. There was so much he didn't know. My mom moved to California, Tommy continued. I only see her in the summer. I live with Dad full-time. He got custody of me 2 years ago. Dad is the best dad, Lily added loyally. He makes funny voices when he reads to us, and he always remembers to cut my sandwiches diagonal because I don't like triangles. Jake smiled, despite the chaos of the situation. He sounds like a really good dad. He is, Tommy said firmly. Then looking Jake directly in the eye with a seriousness that seemed beyond his years, that's why we came. He was really sad last night, even with all the medicine. He kept trying to find his phone. He kept saying he needed to tell you he was sorry. We couldn't let him be sad. Before Jake could respond, there was a sharp knock at the door. He opened it to find a woman in her 60s, her face pale and eyes red from crying. She looked at Jake for just a second before pushing past him and dropping to her knees in front of the children. Tommy, Lily, don't you ever scare me like that again. She pulled them both into a fierce hug, and Jake saw tears streaming down her face. We're sorry, Grandma, Lily said, her voice muffled against Patricia's shoulder. We just wanted to help Dad. Patricia held them for a long moment before pulling back and checking them over, touching their faces and arms as if to make sure they were really there and really okay. Then she stood up and turned to Jake. Mr. Mitchell, I don't know how to thank you. Jake, please. And there's nothing to thank me for. They showed up at my door. Patricia shook her head. They could have ended up anywhere. Thank God they found you safely. She paused, really looking at him for the first time. You're the one David's been talking about. Jake felt his face heat up. He talked about me? Constantly. Patricia smiled, tired but genuine. He was so nervous yesterday. Said he thought you might be the one. The one. Jake felt his eyes sting. Patricia seemed to realize what she'd said and cleared her throat. I should get these two home, and I need to get back to the hospital. How is David? Jake asked. Really? He'll recover fully, thank God. Broken arm, concussion, lots of bruises and cuts. They're keeping him one more night for observation, but he's going to be okay. Jake nodded, relief flooding through him. That's good. That's really good. Patricia gathered the children, but Tommy turned back at the door. Will you come visit Dad? At the hospital? Jake looked at this brave kid who'd walked his little sister across town to deliver a message. Yeah, he said. Yeah, I will. After they left, Jake stood in his suddenly quiet apartment and tried to process everything that had just happened. 24 hours ago, he thought he'd been ghosted. Now he knew the truth was so much more complicated and terrifying and somehow, despite everything, hopeful. David hadn't forgotten about him. David had been trying to get to him even after a car accident. Jake picked up his phone and pulled up David's contact information. His thumb didn't hover over the delete button this time. Instead, he typed a new message. Your kids are amazing. And brave. And I can't wait to see you. He hit send and then sat down on his couch, Winston jumping up beside him. For the first time since yesterday evening, Jake felt like he could breathe. Jake stood in the hospital parking lot, gripping a small potted succulent in one hand and a paper bag in the other. He'd been sitting in his car for 10 minutes, trying to work up the courage to go inside. What was he even doing here? He'd been on exactly 2 dates with David. 2 dates. That didn't give him the right to show up at the hospital, did it? Maybe this was overstepping. Maybe David would be uncomfortable seeing him like this, injured and vulnerable. But then Jake remembered Tommy's serious face asking him to visit. He remembered Lily talking about how her dad smiled when reading his messages. He remembered Patricia saying, David thought he might be the one. Jake took a deep breath and got out of the car. The hospital smelled like disinfectant and that particular kind of recycled air that all hospitals seem to have. Jake stopped at the front desk, suddenly uncertain. Hi, I'm looking for David Chen's room. The receptionist checked her computer. 4th floor, room 412. Are you family? Jake hesitated. What was he? I'm a friend. She nodded and pointed him toward the elevators. Jake's heart pounded the entire ride up. The 4th floor was quieter than the lobby. Just the soft beeping of machines and the occasional nurse walking past. Room 412 was halfway down the hall, door slightly ajar. Jake knocked softly. Hello? Come in, a woman's voice called. Patricia. Jake pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room was small but private, with afternoon sunlight filtering through thin curtains. Patricia sat in a chair by the window, and in the bed, propped up with several pillows, was David. Jake's breath caught. David's left arm was in a cast from hand to elbow, suspended in a sling. There was a bandage on his forehead and a dark purple bruise spreading across his cheekbone. Smaller cuts and scrapes covered his visible skin. His glasses were missing, probably broken in the accident. Without them, his eyes looked bigger, softer, more vulnerable. Those eyes widened when they saw Jake. You came, David said, his voice rough and surprised. Your kids are very persuasive, Jake said, trying for lightness even though his throat felt tight. Patricia stood up with a knowing smile. I'm going to get some coffee. Take your time. She patted Jake's shoulder as she passed. It's good you're here. After she left, Jake moved closer to the bed, still clutching his offerings. I brought you something. I didn't know what you'd want, so I got you a plant. Succulents are basically indestructible, which seemed appropriate. And also, he held up the paper bag. Tommy mentioned you like instant noodles, but I'm guessing hospital food is bad enough without adding those to the mix. So I brought you some real ramen from that place on 5th Street. It's probably cold now, but Jake, David interrupted softly. You're rambling. Jake laughed shakily. Yeah, I am. I'm really glad you're okay. David's expression crumbled. I'm so sorry. About last night. About not showing up. About everything. Jake set the plant and food down on the bedside table and pulled up the chair Patricia had vacated. David, you were in a car accident. You don't have to apologize for that. But I wanted to be there. I was so looking forward to seeing you. David's good hand clenched the blanket. I got dressed 3 times. I must have checked my hair in the mirror a dozen times. Tommy and Lily kept making fun of me. And then everything just fell apart. Your kids told me what happened. About your aunt being sick and having to take them to your mom's. David winced. I didn't tell you about Tommy yet. I was going to last night, actually. I had this whole thing planned. I was going to tell you about my family situation, about how complicated everything is." He looked away. "I wanted to be honest with you, but I also didn't want to scare you off by dumping all my baggage on you too soon." Jake leaned forward. "David, look at me." David turned his head, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "Your kids aren't baggage," Jake said firmly. "They're amazing. Tommy walked his little sister halfway across town to make sure I knew you hadn't stood me up. That's not baggage. That's love. That's family." A tear slipped down David's cheek. "They did that?" "They did. And they scared their grandmother half to death in the process, but yeah, they did that for you." David laughed wetly. "Oh God, my mom must have been terrified." "She was. But they're okay. Everyone's okay." Jake reached out and gently took David's good hand. "Except you. How are you really feeling?" David looked down at their joined hands. "Like I got hit by a car," he said wryly. "The arm is the worst part. Clean breaks in 2 places. I'll be in this cast for at least 6 weeks. The concussion gives me killer headaches, and I look like I went 10 rounds with a prize fighter." "You look like someone who survived something scary," Jake corrected. "And I'm just really, really glad you did." They sat in silence for a moment, hands still clasped. Then David said quietly, "I thought I'd lost my chance with you. All night, even through the pain medication fog. I kept thinking about you sitting at that restaurant waiting for me, thinking I'd stood you up, thinking I was just another jerk." "I did think that," Jake admitted, "for about 12 hours. I'm not going to lie, it hurt. But then your kids showed up and explained everything, and all I could think about was getting here to make sure you were okay. Tommy said you were nice to them, that you called my mom right away and gave them juice. What else was I supposed to do? Though I'll admit, opening my door to find 2 kids I'd never met was not how I expected my Sunday morning to go." David smiled, and despite the bruises and cuts, it was the same warm smile Jake remembered from their dates. "Nothing about this is how I expected things to go. I had this whole plan. Show up to Romano's, tell you about Tommy over dinner, explain my whole complicated family situation like a normal person. Maybe hold your hand again. Maybe kiss you goodnight if the moment felt right." Jake's heart flipped. For what it's worth, I would have said yes to all of that. "Yeah?" "Yeah." Jake squeezed his hand gently. "I really like you, David. 2 dates or 20 dates, that doesn't change. And your family situation isn't scary. It's just life. Real life. Messy and complicated and beautiful." David's eyes filled with tears again. "How are you real?" Before Jake could answer, there was a commotion at the door. Lily burst into the room, Tommy right behind her, and Patricia bringing up the rear looking apologetic. "Dad!" Lily ran to the bed, then stopped short as if remembering she needed to be gentle. "We brought you drawings." Tommy held up a stack of papers. "Grandma said we could visit for a little bit." David's face lit up despite his obvious pain. "Come here, you two, carefully." The kids moved to the opposite side of the bed from Jake, showing their father various crayon drawings. Lily had drawn what appeared to be a family of dinosaurs, while Tommy had sketched a surprisingly detailed comic strip. "This one is you," Lily said, pointing to a purple T-Rex. "And that's me and Tommy and Jake," Jake blinked. "I'm in the drawing?" "You're the orange one," Lily explained matter-of-factly. "Because you have orange plants in your house and orange is a happy color." Patricia caught Jake's eye and mouthed, "Sorry," but Jake just shook his head, smiling. Tommy was less subtle. "Dad, did you tell Jake you really like him yet? Because Grandma said you think he's the one, and that means you're going to get married, right?" "Tommy?" David's face turned bright red, which was quite a feat considering the bruising. "We talked about this. You can't just..." But Grandma said, "What Grandma says in private and what we announce to the entire hospital are different things," David said, shooting a mortified look at his mother. Patricia held up her hands innocently. "I may have mentioned something to the children about how smitten you've been." Jake couldn't help laughing at David's expression. "For the record, I think being the orange dinosaur is a huge honor." Lily beamed at him. "Do you want to be in all our drawings now?" "Lily," David said gently, "Jake and I are still getting to know each other. We need to take things slow." "But you like him," Lily insisted with a child's simple logic. "And he came to visit you. And he gave us juice, so he likes you too. So you should be together." Out of the mouths of babes, Jake thought. Tommy, more perceptive than his 6-year-old sister, seemed to pick up on the adult's awkwardness. Come on, Lily, let's go see if the vending machine has the good chips. But I want to. Lily. Tommy gave her a look that clearly said, read the room. Oh, okay. Lily carefully hugged her father's good side. I love you, Dad. Feel better. I love you too, sweetheart. Patricia ushered the children out, throwing Jake a warm smile as she left. We'll be back in a bit. The door clicked shut, leaving Jake and David alone again. The silence felt heavier now, weighted with everything unsaid. I'm sorry about that, David said finally. My family has no filter sometimes. Don't apologize. They're wonderful. Jake paused. Though Tommy's not wrong, is he? About you really liking me? David met his eyes. No, he's not wrong. I know it's fast, and I know we've only been on 2 actual dates, but Jake, I really, really like you. I think about you constantly. When something good happens, you're the first person I want to tell. When something funny happens, I imagine telling you about it just to hear you laugh. And last night lying in that emergency room, all I could think about was that I might have ruined my chance with someone who makes me feel like this. Jake's chest felt too full. You didn't ruin anything. If anything, this whole crazy situation just showed me more about who you are. You're a great dad. You have people who love you so much they'll break rules to help you, and you were thinking about me even when you were hurt and scared. How could any of that push me away? Most people would run from this much baggage this fast. Stop calling it baggage, Jake said. You have a life. A full life with kids and responsibilities and, yes, complications. But that's not a bad thing. That's just being a real person. David was quiet for a moment. Then he said, My ex-wife left when Tommy was 4. She said she wasn't ready to be a mother, that she'd made a mistake. It broke me for a while. Then 3 years ago I met Lily's mom, Veronica. We weren't married, but we were building something. She got pregnant and we were both so happy. But she had complications during delivery. She didn't make it. Jake's hand tightened around David's. So now I have these 2 incredible kids who've been through so much loss already, and I'm terrified of bringing someone into their lives who might leave again. I'm terrified of them getting attached to someone who realizes one day that this is too much. David, Jake said softly, I can't promise I'll never hurt you or them. Nobody can promise that, but I can promise I'm not going to run away just because things are complicated. I'm not scared of your life. If anything, seeing you with your kids, hearing how much they love you, it just makes me like you more. Even though we've only had 2 dates. Maybe that's true by the technical definition, but I feel like I've learned more about you in the last 24 hours than most people learn in months of dating. I've met your kids, your mom, seen you at your most vulnerable, and I'm still here. I want to keep being here. David's voice was thick with emotion. I want that too. Then let's do this, Jake said. Let's take it slow, like you said. Let's have more dates, let's get to know each other properly. But let's also be honest about the fact that we both feel something real here. Something real, David repeated, smiling through his tears. Yeah, I can do that. The door opened again and Tommy poked his head in. Grandma says we have to go soon because Dad needs rest. But can Jake come to dinner at Grandma's house sometime? David looked at Jake, questioning. I'd love to, Jake said, if that's okay with everyone. It's very okay, Patricia called from the hallway. After another round of careful hugs and promises to visit again soon, Patricia gathered the kids to leave. She paused at the door and looked back at Jake and David. You know, I told David yesterday morning that I had a good feeling about last night's date. I suppose I was right, just not in the way I expected. After they left, Jake stood to go. I should let you rest. You look exhausted. I am, David admitted, but I don't want you to leave yet. I'll come back tomorrow, Jake promised. And the day after that if you want. I brought you that ramen, which the nurses will probably let you heat up. And the succulent can sit on your windowsill and remind you that some things are resilient enough to survive anything. Even car accidents and missed dates, especially those. David caught his hand as he turned to leave. Jake, thank you. For coming, for understanding, for being you. Jake leaned down and very gently pressed a kiss to David's forehead, careful to avoid the bandage and bruises. Get some rest. I'll see you tomorrow. As Jake walked out of the hospital and back to his car, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Real, solid hope that he'd found something worth fighting for. His phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. So? How'd it go? Jake smiled and typed back, I think I just had our 3rd date in a hospital room. And somehow it was perfect, because it was. Messy and complicated and absolutely nothing like he'd planned, but perfect nonetheless. 3 weeks had passed since the accident, and Jake's life had changed in ways he never could have imagined. It started small. The day after his first hospital visit, he'd returned with coffee for Patricia and coloring books for the kids. Then he came back the next day. And the next. By the end of the week, the nurses knew him by name and saved him the good chair in David's room. David had been discharged after 4 days, with strict instructions to rest and follow up with his doctor regularly. Jake had offered to help with whatever was needed, expecting maybe an occasional grocery run or ride to an appointment. What he hadn't expected was how quickly he'd become woven into the fabric of David's daily life. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and Jake was sitting at Patricia's kitchen table helping Tommy with his math homework, while Lily practiced her letters at the other end. David was resting on the couch in the living room, his arm still in the cast, looking frustrated at his forced inactivity. "But I don't get why X has to equal something," Tommy complained, erasing his answer for the 3rd time. "Why can't it just be X?" Jake smiled patiently. "Because X is like a mystery we're solving. It's hiding a number, and we have to figure out what that number is. Math is weird." "Math is very weird," Jake agreed. "But you're doing great. Look, you almost have it." Lily held up her paper where she'd written her name in wobbly letters. "Jake, look." "I did it without the lines." "That's amazing, Lily. Your L's are getting so good." She beamed at him, and Jake felt that now familiar warmth in his chest. These kids had somehow become a huge part of his life in just 3 weeks. Patricia walked into the kitchen, carrying a laundry basket. "Jake, honey, you don't have to be here every afternoon. I'm sure you have work to do." Jake did have work. He was a graphic designer who usually worked from home, which meant he had flexibility, but it also meant deadlines were piling up while he spent his afternoons at Patricia's house. "I'm managing," he said, which wasn't entirely true. He'd stayed up until 2 in the morning the last 3 nights finishing projects. But looking at Tommy's concentrated face as he worked through the equation, at Lily's proud smile, at David dozing on the couch, he couldn't bring himself to care about the lost sleep. "You're a godsend," Patricia said warmly. "David tries to help them with homework, but he gets so frustrated with one hand. And I love them, but my patience for 4th grade math isn't what it used to be. I really don't mind," and he didn't. What surprised him was how natural it all felt. He'd never spent much time around kids before. He'd always assumed he'd be awkward or wouldn't know what to say. But Tommy and Lily made it easy. They treated him like he'd always been part of their world. Tommy finally solved his equation and pumped his fist. "Yes, I got it." "See? You're a natural," Jake said. "Can we play the dinosaur game now?" Lily asked hopefully. "You promised." The dinosaur game was something that had evolved naturally over the past week. Jake pretended to be a paleontologist, and Lily would hide her toy dinosaurs around Patricia's living room for him to discover. It was silly and simple, but Lily loved it. 15 minutes, Jake said. "Then I need to check on your dad and probably head home to do some work." Lily scampered off to hide her dinosaurs, and Tommy, homework complete, pulled out a book. Patricia sat down at the table with Jake, her expression turning serious. "Can I ask you something?" she said quietly. "Of course. Are you sure you know what you're getting into here?" Jake met her eyes. "What do you mean?" Patricia gestured around. All of this. David's got a long recovery ahead. Between the arm and the concussion, he can't work for at least another month. Money's tight. The kids need constant attention. His ex-wife is supposed to take Tommy for the summer, but she's making noises about backing out again. And David, bless him, he's independent to a fault. He hates needing help. "I've noticed," Jake said with a small smile. "My point is, this isn't like normal dating. There's no easing into this. You're jumping into the deep end of a very complicated pool." Jake was quiet for a moment, considering his words carefully. "Ms. Chen, I know this is fast. I know it's probably crazy, but I can't imagine not being here. When I wake up in the morning, I think about whether David slept okay or if his arm was hurting. I wonder if Tommy finished his reading assignment. I hope Lily remembered to bring her dinosaur to school for show and tell. And yeah, it's a lot. Yeah, it's complicated, but it feels right." Patricia reached over and squeezed his hand. "David's been hurt before. Those kids have been hurt before. I just need to know you're not going to wake up one day and realize this is too much." I can't promise I'm perfect, Jake said honestly. I'm sure I'll make mistakes. But I'm not going anywhere. Not unless David asks me to leave. She studied his face for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, I believe you. Lily came running back. I hid them. Come find them. Jake spent the next 15 minutes dutifully searching for plastic dinosaurs, while Lily provided increasingly obvious hints. When he discovered the T-Rex behind the TV stand, Lily clapped like he'd won a Nobel Prize. David had woken up and was watching them with a soft expression on his face. Jake caught his eye and smiled. After the dinosaur game, Jake told the kids goodbye and walked into the living room. He sat on the coffee table facing David's couch. How are you feeling? He asked. Useless, David said bluntly. I can't work, can't help my kids with homework, can't even do laundry without struggling. And you're here every single day picking up my slack. I'm not picking up slack. I'm spending time with people I care about. David's jaw tightened. Jake, you don't have to do this. You don't owe me anything. We'd been on 2 dates when this happened. 2. That's not enough to obligate you to become a part-time nanny and tutor. Jake felt something twist in his chest. They'd been dancing around this conversation for days. Is that what you think this is? Obligation? I don't know what else to call it. You're here out of guilt or pity or maybe I'm here because I want to be, Jake interrupted. Maybe I'm here because I like your kids. Because I like your mom. Because I like you. You barely know me. I know you take your coffee with too much sugar. I know you get cranky when you're tired and try to hide it by being extra polite. I know you sing off-key in the shower and that Tommy makes fun of you for it. I know you feel guilty asking for help even when you desperately need it. I know you're terrified of people leaving, so you try to push them away first. Jake leaned forward. I know enough. David looked away, blinking hard. This isn't fair to you. Let me decide what's fair to me. Jake, do you want me to leave? Honest answer. Because if you genuinely want me gone, I'll go. But if you're pushing me away because you're scared or because you think you're protecting me or some other martyr nonsense, then I'm going to keep showing up. David was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. I don't want you to leave. I want you here so much it terrifies me. Then stop trying to push me away. What if you wake up one day and realize this is too much? What if you leave and the kids are hurt? What if I'm hurt? Jake moved from the coffee table to sit beside David on the couch, careful of his injured arm. What if none of that happens? What if we actually make this work? What if we build something real? Is that what you want? Something real? Yeah, Jake said softly. That's exactly what I want. David turned to look at him, and Jake saw all the fear and hope warring in his eyes. I haven't been with anyone seriously since Veronica died. I've been so focused on the kids, on just surviving day to day. I don't know if I remember how to do this. We'll figure it out together. You make it sound so simple. Maybe it is. Maybe we're the ones making it complicated. David laughed weakly. You're too good to be true, you know that? I'm really not. I'm messy and forgetful, and I stay up too late and drink too much coffee. I talk to my plants. I cry at commercials. I'm not perfect. You seem pretty perfect from where I'm sitting. Jake felt his face heat. That's the pain medication talking. I'm not on pain medication right now. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then David said, will you stay for dinner? Mom's making her special lasagna. I have a deadline tomorrow morning. Oh, right. Of course. But I can stay for dinner and work late tonight. Jake finished. I've gotten pretty good at functioning on no sleep lately. David frowned. You shouldn't have to do that. I'm choosing to do it. There's a difference. Dinner was chaotic in the best way. Lily spilled her juice twice. Tommy told an elaborate story about a kid at school who brought a frog for show and tell. Patricia's lasagna was incredible, and David, despite his injury and frustration, laughed more than Jake had seen him laugh since before the accident. After dinner, Jake helped clean up while the kids got ready for bed. He was drying dishes when Tommy appeared in the kitchen doorway in his pajamas. Jake, can you help me with something? Sure, buddy. What's up? Tommy led him to the small bedroom he was using at his grandmother's house. He pulled out a piece of paper from under his pillow, looking nervous. We're supposed to write about our family for school, Tommy explained, but I don't know what to say. My family is weird. Jake sat on the edge of the bed. Weird how? My mom doesn't live with us. Lily's mom is dead. We live with Grandma right now because Dad got hurt. Other kids have normal families. Jake's heart ached. Tommy, there's no such thing as normal families. Every family is different. Some kids live with both parents. Some live with one. Some live with grandparents or aunts or uncles. Some have two moms or two dads. What matters isn't what your family looks like on paper. It's how much you love each other. But what do I write? Write about what makes your family special. Write about how your dad tries to make funny voices when he reads to you. Write about how Lily shares her dinosaurs with you even though they're her favorite toys. Write about how your grandma makes the best lasagna and always has cookies in the jar. Tommy thought about this. What about you? Should I write about you? Jake blinked, surprised. I don't know. Do you want to? You're here all the time now. You help with my homework and play with Lily and make Dad smile. That seems like family stuff. Jake's throat felt tight. Then yeah, you can write about me if you want to. Tommy nodded seriously and picked up his pencil. As Jake stood to leave, the boy said quietly, I'm glad you came to find us that day. When Lily and me went to your apartment, I'm glad you found me too. Later, as Jake was getting ready to leave, David walked him to the door. Well, walked was generous. David was still moving carefully, favoring his injured side. You didn't have to spend your whole evening here, David said. I wanted to, though I do need to go home and work now, or my client is going to kill me tomorrow. David caught his good hand. Jake, thank you for everything. For being patient with me, for being so good with the kids, for just being here. Jake squeezed his hand. There's nowhere else I'd rather be. He meant it. As he drove home that night, thinking about Tommy's homework assignment and Lily's dinosaur game and David's smile over dinner, Jake realized something. He'd spent so long looking for someone to share his life with. But maybe he'd been thinking about it wrong. Maybe it wasn't about finding someone to fit into his life. Maybe it was about finding a life worth fitting into. His phone buzzed with a text from David. Get home safe. And don't stay up too late working. You need sleep. Jake smiled and texted back. Says the guy who can barely sleep through the night because of his arm. Fair point. We're a mess, aren't we? Yeah, Jake typed. But we're a mess together. That's got to count for something. David's response came a moment later. It counts for everything. Jake pulled into his parking spot and sat in his car for a moment, rereading that message. Then he grabbed his laptop bag and headed inside. He had work to do and only 5 hours of sleep ahead of him before he'd be back at Patricia's house tomorrow afternoon. But as he settled at his desk and opened his laptop, Jake couldn't stop smiling. Because for the first time in his life, he wasn't just falling for someone. He was falling for a whole family. And terrifying as that was, it also felt like coming home.